Probably not. Unless we are. Am I live? I think I'm live. Hey everybody. Hello. Okay, now I'm coming through my own headphones.
Probably not.
On some
Unless
tower.
we are.
Here I am. Okay. Hi all. Welcome to the first ever Chattercat live stream. That's so exciting. I'm just gonna sort of chill for a minute as we wait for people to kind of show up. But that's cool. I thought maybe we could go through some headcanons. I've got this cool tier list that I made myself right here with basically every possible interpretation of all of the characters. Well, not all of them, but you know, all the main ones. Also, yes, the thumbnail is meant to be a joke. If you were like, oh, what? Cis boy Susie, yeah, it's a joke. It's not meant to mean anything. So yeah, thank y'all so much for coming, and I think we can probably get started. I don't really know what the sense is waiting. We have another minute before the stream officially starts, but okay, so Deltarune. It's a great game, great characters, and I think I should stress before we go any further that I'm going to be talking about like headcanons in particular here. With my video, I kind of tried to make the strongest like theory argument possible for a few reasons. One, because I mean, I think people make anything theories anyway. Like, people will just call anything a Deltarune theory, and people will go really far out there. So I was like, what's the use? What's the harm in presenting the strongest possible version of my argument? Like, do I actually think Toby's gonna make ralsei a girl? Like, do I think he's gonna make her come out in chapter 6 or 7? Like, probably not. But like, I think it's possible, you know. And I think if that does happen, I would like to have said I called it instead of having to be able to say like, oh yeah, I really liked the idea, but I didn't think it was going to happen. You know, like, what's the harm in presenting it like as the strongest possible argument? And I do think it's possible. But for this, I think most of these interpretations are not ever going to be canon. I don't think we're ever going to really see Susie come out as a trans guy or something. Like, that would be weird. But I do think if you're specifically talking in the context of like theories and stuff, or not theories. I think if you're talking in the context of like interpretations, like thematic readings of like, how would this character being trans enhance the themes, and how would it enhance the sort of stuff that their arc is saying and the stuff that they're like doing as a character. I think that's kind of the metrics I'm going to be using as the tier list for this. And I also want to say the reason I'm doing this as a live stream is because I really am interested in hearing y'all's opinions. So if you have any headcanons that you really like, then I would love to hear your arguments for them as I go through them. I think we're going to go through the characters in order, probably. I have them laid out like that. Or we could go like all the cis girl headcanons, all the trans girl headcanons. I don't know. That would be kind of weird. I think let's start with the characters, probably. We'll start with ralsei, because ralsei is the character that I made a whole video about. I think trans girl ralsei, like I kind of make in the argument for the video, is kind of the gold standard for me personally. I think in terms of a trans reading of a character, there's kind of every possible kind of case you could make. I mean, there's like the, you know, textual femininity that I think makes trans girls relate to a character like this. But even if you aren't, and as we've seen in my comment section, many people like to go, well, actually, ralsei being feminine doesn't make her a trans girl, doesn't make him a trans girl or anything, which is true. But I also, as I go through in this video, make a very strong argument for all of the sort of ways in which his personal identity and relationship to having a sense of self and having defined his gender and relationship to gender all sort of point to the idea of like if he was a trans girl, then he wouldn't know it, and if he was a trans girl, he would probably act very similar to the way he does uh, in the game. So to me, I think that's kind of the gold standard for now. They're actually I am going to put something above this, but this is like the ultimate trans headcanon to me personally for reasons that I've explained. Um, on that note, transfem non-binary ralsei. As you might have noticed, the video is called Transfem Ralsei, not Transgor Ralsei. And I think pretty much all of these arguments work the same, even if Ralsei is non-binary, but still like wanting to transition to become more feminine. I think you can make the arguments the same. So these are kind of equivalent to me. Non-binary Ralsei is a similar one. I think, honestly, you could really make some strong arguments for non-binary Ralsei too. I mean, everything about Ralsei wanting to be more feminine doesn't mean like that they wouldn't also want to be masculine in certain scenarios. Like Ralsei is, as we see him presented in the game, read as masculine by default by basically everyone he interacts with. So if he did enjoy that in certain scenarios, then that would still make sense. And there are even some scenes in the game that I think kind of indicate Ralsei enjoys being kind of traditionally masculine in some ways. Like the one I always think of is the scene in chapter 2 with the where he like shows up randomly dressed as like a little butler in a suit, and he seems to be having a lot of fun with it. I think there's a few other stuff like that where you can make an argument where it's like, oh, Ralsei is wants to be feminine in a lot of ways, but doesn't want to be like fully feminine. Like they want to they don't want to be restricted to this very limited idea of gender that is being enforced to them by the prophecy. I think it works. I obviously like transgender Ralsei and transfem non-binary Ralsei personally, because I think it there's a lot more evidence for that, and there's a lot more sort of things that are inclined to it. But if you argue for non-binary Ralsei, I am on your side. I think it's great. I think it's all great. Yeah, I just love Ralsei is the bottom line. Also, yeah, let me see what's going on in the chat. I saw someone said something above transgender Ralsei. Yeah, it's not going to be that surprising, but I'll get to that in a minute. Yes, I am using the VetoTube thing. I didn't set that up a little bit ago. I know it's not the most elegant little talky PNG tuber thing, but it's cute. So I don't know. It gives you a little something else to look at. Okay, other Ralsei interpretations. Here's my kind of big one. I think we might need a tier for like, I don't know, like I get it if you're projecting. But here's the thing, like trans boy Ralsei, like I think it can be really cute, and I think there are a lot of trans guys that I've heard and that I've seen all around who really like Ralsei and really like the idea of Ralsei being trans masc or a trans guy. And I think you'll see a lot of people really relating to his sort of style of femininity that's sort of like not intimidating and not super tough, but like being allowed to be sort of like soft and sweet. And like I think a lot of trans guys relate to that, and I think a lot of cis guys relate to that too and appreciate Ralsei for that. And I think I'm probably going to put cis boy Ralsei above trans boy Ralsei, because the thing about trans boy Ralsei for me is it just doesn't really make sense with the story of the game. Because when we first meet Ralsei, like he has basically no self-determination. He has no self-identity. Like the idea of Ralsei coming into existence as, like as designated as a girl or whatever, and then like deciding to want to become masculine while hiding in like the darkness alone for years and years, like it doesn't really like Ralsei as a character is so based around this idea of like I have to be what I want to be for others. I can't make myself happy. I have to sacrifice my own enjoyment and my own desires, and I have to be the prince that the prophecy wants me to be, and I have to it just doesn't really work with the story. But I get it. As a trans person, there have been times when I've seen a character that doesn't really make sense to be trans in canon, but I'm like, but it would add a lot because they remind me of a lot of trans people that I know. So we'll just stick it in B for now because it can be cute. It really can. And to all the trans guys out there that love ralsei, well, I love you, and I love you for loving Deltarune and for loving ralsei, and we are allied in that. So even if it doesn't make a lot of sense story wise, I think it's still a cute reading. Cis boy ralsei, I think similarly has the same kind of like. Like cis boy ralsei also has a similar kind of case as trans girl ralsei, obviously, where it's like wanting, like having him coming into existence and having to be the prince and having this sort of idea that he is into, but as many people have pointed out, ralsei can still be cis and still have a positive relationship to identity and to gender that is his own and is self-defined, and those things aren't really contradictory. So yeah, we'll put it in, I don't know, upper B, A. The tiers don't really matter that much. We'll move stuff around as we go. If we like have too much stuff, we'll move them down. But it's in between these for now, so we'll just say that. Cis girl, I'll say it isn't. No, it's nothing, and I think we all know it's nothing. It's like that one video from forever ago. It doesn't make any sense. It makes even less sense than trans boy ralsei, because like why? I guess maybe if she was secretly, she was just lying to us the whole time, but no, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So yeah, I think that's pretty uncontroversial to put that in F tier. What else we got? Trans masc non-binary ralsei. This was pretty. I don't really know why I distinguished all the like non-binary and trans masc non-binary and trans boy, like you could argue these are pretty similar. I don't really know where to put this. I guess we'll just stick it here for now. I mean, it's the same kind of thing where it's like I don't know. We're just gonna stick it here for now. All the arguments I made in white trans boy ralsei doesn't really make sense in the story of the game. Kind of apply to. But also the arguments about like if you're trans masc and you like ralsei, then yeah, I get it. I don't know. I'm not making a distinction between these. All right, Chris. I think we're gonna add a separate tier that's just like the like fuck you tier. And this is specially reserved for cis girl Chris and cis boy Chris, because I think if you're a Deltarune fan, especially a trans Deltarune fan, you definitely know what it's like to see people arguing that Chris is a boy or a girl and a cis boy or a cis girl, and usually not necessarily saying that term, because it's usually trans folks who don't care what the word cis means, or if they even know it, but they're just like, yeah, Chris is a boy, Chris is a girl, and we've seen these arguments since the times of Undertale. But it's usually based in active transphobia at best, So I think if you're legitimately arguing these, then yeah, you're just trolling probably. This is non-binary, Chris. This is one that I mentioned in the community post. This is, I think, a pretty old headcanon for a lot of Deltarune fans. People, I think, especially back in like Chapter 1 era, used to argue that the humans in Undertale are non-binary, which there is. The thing about that is like the ghosts are non-binary. Like Mettaton seems to have transitioned from being non-binary as a ghost. Napstablook is non-binary. Mad Mew Mew was also, the Mad Dummy was used they them. Like the default for ghosts seems to be non-binary, so you could maybe make an argument that like the humans are also non-binary, and it's like a weird kind of like parody of like how Monster Society is human society and the humans are like outsiders to it. It's it's just like a kind of a funny, cute thing, I guess, but it doesn't really hold up to much scrutiny. It's just something that you can say and go, okay, that'd be interesting, but I don't think it's really makes much sense for humans as a species to be non-binary in the Deltarune world. Okay, I think I'm just gonna skip ahead a little bit because this is like, again, like I said this. It's not that much of a surprise that I think this is the best Deltarune trans interpretation, is Chris being non-binary and trans. I think obviously Chris is textually non-binary in every way. They're constantly referred to as they them. They're constantly gendered and as non-binary, and they're constantly it's very core to their characterization. But reading it specifically through a trans lens, I think really enhances their character. And I think if you are a trans person and have gone through the sort of like awkward period of being a teenager, you can really there's really a lot to read in with Chris being non-binary. I mean, there's a lot of stuff when actually I can kind of skip ahead to some of these others. I mean, here's the thing about non-binary Chris is basically canon. But sometimes something I will see people argue about sometimes is like transfem versus transmasc non-binary Chris. Basically, in the context of this, because Chris is uses they them and is pretty androgynous regardless. But basically, being like, would they be assigned male or assigned female, and like which direction are they kind of transitioning to being non-binary to? And for me personally, I think transfem Chris kind of takes it. Some people might argue that transfem Chris is even better than transfem ralsei because there's a lot of indicators of, I don't know, like the sort of masculine is the like forcible being read as masculine by parties outside of their consent and outside of their like autonomy, especially in Weird Route. You can kind of feel the way that like Weird Route is like forcing the narrative of Deltarune to conform to like traditional like RPG tropes, and in a lot of ways Chris is being sort of forcibly read as masculine and to be this like male hero archetype for Noelle, who's being forced into this like submissive kind of like weak powerless woman character. That plus stuff like Man Country is a really interesting thing when you think about like Chris, like Chris's childhood and like it's a man's world and stuff like that. But non-men are allowed to, it's like that's the default. But if you're not a man, that's okay. But stuff like that. And also there's the classic example of what is it, the shampoo that's barely used, the like for boys shampoo that's like untouched, which some people argue that could be Asriel's or something. But I think if you read Chris as like having had to transitioned off screen or before the game started, and like them kind of fighting against this version of themselves that is not ever shown. I mean, their parents seem to gender them correctly, their town seems to gender them correctly, but maybe is still kind of affecting ways that they're read. I think it's really interesting, and I think you can argue very well for transfem Chris and under that lens. But again, all of this kind of folds into the non-binary Chris, so that's why I think this is like the ultimate headcanon. Not even headcanon, it's the ultimate canon. It's just the best. Transmasc Chris, I think similarly, I think it's interesting because it kind of like flips the script a little bit on what we were talking about with the weird root and like how they're sort of being forcibly put into a more masculine role. But in this case, it would be kind of like less of an active misgendering and sort of reduction to how they would have been read as a child, and more of like a sort of like co-opting of their own sort of assumed masculinity to then force them into an even more masculine role. And I think that's certainly very interesting too. And I don't know, I think it works very well regardless. And I mean, Chris is trans. Chris is trans, and as long as you're reading them as trans, I think it's great. So, all right, now how do I feel about these placements? Should I put this above these? We're just gonna do this, I guess. I don't know. The tier list doesn't have to be perfect, as long as it's in their same general spot. I think we're good. Trans girl Chris and trans boy Chris. Now see, this is similar to me as like the trans boy ralsei tier of like you're just kind of projecting, but like I don't know. I think there are some trans people who want to read Chris as like sort of an intermediate period of like you're a trans youth who's hasn't fully discovered their gender yet, and I'll see people argue for like, I don't know. I don't think it really works, and I think it is kind of misgendery to deny their non-binariness. I mean, again, like we just talked about, you can read Chris through a transfem or a transmasc lens without basically saying they're not non-binary. So for me, this is pretty low. Okay, I guess we're in Susie City. Susie is a really interesting character because I feel like you can really make a strong argument for Susie in basically every category. First off, we're gonna give her the boon for the best cis interpretation. I think Susie being a cis girl and being kind of a gender nonconforming girl and having her own relationship with femininity and her own sort of way of defining herself is, I think, amazing. I think it's great, and I think it really, especially because I mean she's clearly queer, right? Like she's clearly a bi or a lesbian or something, where she is like has a like she does exists pretty firmly outside of the sort of gendered expectations for what you would expect how a girl has to act, and she doesn't seem to care. In fact, she seems to it doesn't even bother her in the slightest that she is uh a girl, but isn't the way that a cis person, or not a cis person because my point is that she is cis, but like a transphobe or a homophobe might want a cis girl to act. Like I think Susie being cis but being so sort of gender non-conforming in her cisness, and then especially how it interacts with the other interpretations, like Susie's sort of confident girlness inspiring a trans femme ralsei, or inspiring Chris. I think there's so much you can read with their relationship, and the two of them both sort of having their own relationship to gender and to queerness. I think it's great. And also, like, that's the interesting thing about it to me, is also like Susie is like she is very I think about that scene in chapter 4 where she sees the girl and the prophecy, and just gets so excited about it, like getting to be this girl of the prophecy. Like she clearly likes to have that recognized. It's almost as if this has been kind of like denied to her, like because she's not a girl in the way that people would expect her to be. She doesn't really have like the idea of being like not just a girl but like the girl and the hero, and like being like it's clearly something she really loves. So I think for me, yeah, it's great. And on that topic of Susie being sort of excited to be a girl, I think trans girl Susie is pretty interesting. Like it's not really in the upper echelon of interpretations for me for a few reasons. One of them is with the ribbons and with what we see of Susie's childhood. It seems to me that she doesn't really she seems to me that she's always had a pressure on her from adults in her life, especially when she was a kid without much autonomy, whether that would be her parents or foster care, or we don't really know much about what Susie's childhood was like, but it seems to me that she has this desire to be not super traditionally feminine from a young age, that she's kind of forced to be like a girl, and like a pretty girl, and like a polite girl that isn't violent and isn't aggressive and follows all the rules, and like there's this kind of feeling whenever, which doesn't happen a lot because there's only a few scenes in the game where this happens, but the parts where we kind of hear her talk about her childhood, she seems to have been wanting to be more masc, or at least less like traditionally feminine than the other way around. But again, like if we're getting out of like pure like how would this fit with the game, and more like if this was the case in the game, how would it affect her character, I think the idea of Susie being a trans girl is really interesting, and it would sort of like if you just look at how she behaves in the game, the way that she is sort of like not allowed to be sort of like a very like classically feminine girl, and the way that she's kind of seen as like aggressive and intense and scary from everyone around her, all her classmates and stuff, and the way that she kind of like feels herself like falling into this archetype of, like I have to be the bad guy, but then like discovering and loving her kind of like personal relationship with femininity, I think is really cool. So yeah, to me this is gonna go probably around here ish. I don't know. I think it works. It's cute. Um, but it's just not the most canon compliant. But it's cool. I like it. Yeah, this is just the kids, the heroes slash classmates. Uh, this boy Susie is just like what? I guess I don't know. It's not really anything. Um, and then transfem non-binary Susie. Again, there's not really much else to say about it that is distinct from the trans girl Susie. Well, actually, maybe there is a little more to say about it because again, I think you can argue that her specific kind of gender nonconformity and desire to not be like a perfectly classically feminine girl and being sort of tough and cool and strong and all these things, like those could kind of read as like here's the thing about Susie is I don't think she knows what the word non-binary means. I think if you said that to her she'd be like what, but I think if you in like a future setting or like if you explained gender to her a bit more, I think she could be like, oh yeah, I mean I don't really care about that gender stuff that much, and I think I think she could get into being non-binary. I guess so. Yeah, we'll give that some points. All right, now here's another one. Trans masc non-binary Susie. This is pretty similar to what I was saying about, I mean, like this is kind of just like a case of labels to me. Like I think about like butch Susie or butch trans masc Susie, in particular of if she was, I mean, like again, I think we can have Susie be a cis girl but also gender non-conforming and not caring about traditional uh gender conformity. But I think with Susie being kind of specifically having a trans masc lens on that, where she doesn't necessarily want to just be a guy, but she wants to be masc in like a very distinctly trans way. I think you can kind of read into like stuff with her relationship to like Gerson, something like that. Like this desire to be like um to have like a I mean, there's a lot you can say about her relationship with Gerson and how crazy it is and how it feels like Susie's never had a good role model at all. But yeah, I think it's interesting. And I think you could do some interesting stuff with it. So we'll put it around here. All right, I should be reading the chat. All right, we'll take a break to check the chat. Yeah, the cis non-binary Chris is not meant to be intersex Chris, although I'm sure we could talk about intersex readings of the characters too. That's kind of a different topic than specifically like their gender identities. Like I said earlier, this is meant to be like if in a weird way because we don't see anything about the human society in Deltarune. Like they're just like all humans are non-binary. Uh, it's a thing that people used to say, but I think it's kind of fallen off as we've seen more of the way that Chris relates to gender and relates to society as a whole. It seems to be more intentionally trans. This is more of a thing back in the days of when we didn't really know much about Chris as a character at all. All right, what else we got? Non-binary Susie. Again, pretty similar arguments like can be applied. It's the idea of, I mean, Susie is queer in a lot of ways, and I think reading that queerness as Susie being non-binary is pretty awesome. So trans boy Susie is interesting. Again, like I think that Susie kind of has this sort of like enjoyment of being a girl that we see especially in chapter 4 or but I think again with the stuff about the ribbons and the stuff about her childhood, I think you could make an argument for it that would probably be a bit stronger than the trans boy ralsei argument. So we'll put it around here. I don't know. As you can see, Susie had they're just all good. All the Susie interpretations are good because she's just great. Thanks. uh, Add Sans in the tier list. Maybe some other time. I feel like if anything, the weird root is like the cis root. All right, Noelle. Noelle is interesting. There's a lot we could say about Noelle. My kind of hot take about Noelle is, well, I guess first we can just do that. It doesn't make any sense. But my hot take about Noelle that I don't really see a lot of people talk about is I think trans masc Noelle could be really cool. I feel like I don't ever really see people discuss that, but like I think Noelle's specific sort of like, I mean, Noelle is very much like sort of like put in this kind of like having to be the perfect daughter role through a lot of Deltarune, especially with Death being gone and having all of the pressure of her family on her. I think you can kind of there's this feeling of Noelle like wanting to be something else and hiding it really well, but there's a few little details like I think about the part in chapter 2 where you like can look into Noelle's closet and I think Susie maybe says something like I've never seen her wear any clothes like this, you know, and some people interpret that as her just like wanting to have like alternative fashion styles or something like that, which I think is definitely probably also the case. But either way, like Noelle is very like sort of preppy and classically feminine and really like archetypically, I mean her theme is literally girl next door. Like she's like the default like cute girl from a piece of media that in your classic story would probably be set up to romance the male protagonist, but in Deltarune, because it's a subversion of that kind of like romance protagonist route becomes kind of like horrifying, and instead we have this really awesome narrative with Susie and Noelle being like the like queer couple. But I think trans masc Noelle is pretty cool. I don't really see people talk about it that often, but I think it could be really cool with what little we really know about like how she wants to be besides just how she is. I mean, what we see from especially in chapter 4, the like especially like her home life with Carol and stuff seems to be really really restrictive. So yeah, that's I think it could be interesting. No, I didn't rank Deltarune ships, but maybe one day we could do that after. We're going through this pretty fast. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna put trans masc Noelle pretty high. We're gonna go. I'm gonna put it up here because I'm feeling crazy. I'm feeling spicy. Trans boy Noelle similarly pretty high. Why not? Trans girl Noelle is one of those interpretations that I think you see a lot, especially if you are a trans person in the Deltarune fandom. You will see a lot of trans girls relating to Noelle and wanting her to be trans. And yeah, as someone brought up in the chat, her suspiciously trans-colored bedroom. And I think she's just like a character that is commonly read as transfem because well, I don't really know why. I mean, if we have any transfem or trans girl Noelle fans in the chat, I'd love to hear what y'all think about transfem Noelle. Like I guess it's just because like maybe it's similar to like trans boy ralsei, where it's just like kind of like an aspirational kind of like her relationship to femininity is very sort of like cute and positive for the most part. It seems to be like a really positive thing for her, and I think people like the idea of it being kind of a chosen trans girl thing. Yeah, that's the thing about it. It doesn't really like. I think it made more sense with like chapter 1 or chapter 2, but like the more we learn, the less it kind of fits narratively. Uh, Similar to trans boy ralsei, it just doesn't really work. But I think it's cute, and I think when I see art where people make Noelle a trans girl or whatever, it's like, oh, that's adorable. So we'll put it around here. You know, nothing is really that low. uh, Transfem non-binary Noelle. I think you kind of get the best of both worlds here. If you're into the transfem Noelle, but you also like the idea of her being sort of having a desired sort of sense for gender nonconformity. I think that'd be a really interesting version of her narrative, having her like maybe transition really young, but then like kind of get, so I don't know, like boxed into a very binary version of being a girl, but then wanting to be more non-binary. Um, I don't know. It's interesting, but yeah, I don't know. We'll put it around here. B tier, I guess. I don't know. It's interesting. Cis girl Noelle. It's what's the game is telling you is happening. It's fine. I love Noelle's. I mean, the thing about Noelle is like she's like a lesbian, Like Noelle is very obviously coded to be queer, and I think most of her queerness can be read as just like her like desire to not be forced into a straight relationship, and to be openly a lesbian. I think it's pretty easy to make an argument for cis girl Noelle because of that, and I think I'd probably rank it as one of the best cis interpretations. Like, yeah, she's a girl, and she seems to be pretty happy being a girl, and she wants to be a lesbian, but also still be a girl. So yeah, it's fine. It works. I guess we'll put it around like here. I do think this kind of takes it for me though. Non-binary Noelle, similar, like it's a pretty broad category. Noelle being wanting to be non-binary, I mean, you can kind of fit it in with a lot of the other interpretations of her. Um, we'll just put it, I don't know, around here. I don't know, around here. So I do think it's better than non-binary Susie, but I don't know. All right, let me see what's going on in the chat because I see some interesting takes. Yeah, totally. Creates some really interesting dynamics with Chris and Susie for sure. Okay, we're moving along. Who do we have left? Birdly. Birdly is a fun one. I feel like do people still care about Trans Girl Birdly? For a while, Trans Girl Birdly was really popular. Arguably the most popular trans Deltarune headcanon, which I think is interesting. I feel like it's kind of fallen off a little bit, but I think a lot of people still do really love it. I remember that being really big in like chapter like 2 era back in the day. People were really into transfem Birdly, and I think a lot of it is because Birdly is like a very classically like sort of nerdy kind of repressed kid. And I think a lot of trans girls relate to that sort of like image of like being kind of like annoying in middle school or whatever and being kind of a nerd, but then like not really like having much personal sort of stuff figured out until later, and people I think find it really cute, and I find it really cute too. It's cute. We'll give it some points. Where should we put Trans Girl Birdly? I don't know. Is it better than Trans Girl Susie? Maybe. I mean, the thing about Birdly is like he's kind of a joke. Like he's a serious character and you're meant to take him seriously and feel serious emotions for him, but he's also a joke character and he's meant to be really silly. And I think a lot of the trans headcanons are relate are for Burley are like would it be funny? And I think I've seen a lot of funny art for that. So yeah, but I don't know. We love Burley around here. Um, Amazing character and a really interesting character in like every way. I don't know. We'll just do that. A tier. Uh, I love non-binary. This is my other weird kind of weird take. I think non-binary Burley is really funny, especially when you compare it to like Chris. The idea of Burley being like, Chris, I am also non-binary now. It's adorable, and I think Burley would like, but Burley choosing to interpret being non-binary as like the most elite gender. Like they've leveled up to the ultimate gamer gender of having no gender. They've transcended it. I think that could be really funny. I don't know. I think it's cute. Yeah, I think it's really works really well with Chris and their dynamic with Chris. Cisco Burley is like the best. Oh my god, guys, Burley is such a no. That's not anything. It goes in that I don't know what the fuck you're talking about here. Um, Burley completionist gender. Burley transitioning to every gender just so they can get all the achievements. That would be really great. Um, yeah, trans mass Burley. I think you've seen people talk about. Someone said in the chat like, let me find the message. Yeah, because I was a similar kind of insufferable when I was younger. I think that's something a lot of trans guys relate to. So yeah, we'll put that pretty high. It's cute. Burley being trans mask is it's pretty cute. That's the thing about the Deltarune characters is they're all so great that like it's hard to find a reading that doesn't make me think, "Oh, that's so cute." Um, these I don't really have that much else to say about them. That's different from the sort of what I said about them before. So we'll just sort of slot them in there. Cis boy Burley. I mean, yeah, Burley being cis is kind of hilarious to me too because like especially with like how queer the entire rest of the cast is, like Burley being like the one cis guy that's like and I'm here too is just really great. So yeah, I it's all great. I think we're pretty happy with this. Oh, that's too high. How do we feel? Any headcanons we should move up, move down? I'm deferring to my chat. Any stuff, any interpretations I skipped over, stuff I didn't really think about. What do y'all think? Oh yeah, that's another thing. Birdly is really aromantic. I think if we're talking about sexuality headcanons, I really love the idea of Arrow Birdly because like his entire like weird like his like he feels like he has this crush on Noelle that he feels like he kind of like has to have in a lot of ways. Like it doesn't feel like he's really. I mean, we see that in the game itself. He's like, yeah, I thought I like. It feels like he just because he's a guy and he has a relationship with a girl, he's like, now we have to have like romantic tension. But then he like pivots to having a crush on Susie for no reason, just because he's like, I like Susie at all. I think she's a good person. So he suddenly decides he has a crush on her. It just feels like he feels like it feels like if someone came to him and was like, dude, you don't have to date anyone. You don't have to want to be in a relationship with anyone. He'd be like, you don't, and he would just be like, great. I think it'd be hilarious, and cute, and so yeah, that's great. Okay. I've explained this non-binary thing a few times. It doesn't make any sense. It's an old headcanon from the old days of the fandom, based on the idea that all the humans in Deltarune are non-binary as a species, which is weird but interesting. Doesn't mean intersex, not in this context. Intersex headcanons we could talk about. I guess we can do that. Anybody have anything to say for intersex headcanons? I mean, I feel like it's just like it could be interesting for like any of them to be intersex. Like, but I don't know. That's not what it means for this context. I'm eating a peanut butter cup. Anybody want one? Yeah, it's pretty stupid. I don't have that much else to say. I guess we can do like comment responses. Anybody have any questions about the video? There was a lot of good ones. And this is so true and so cute. I don't know. I think we're probably gonna wrap up the stream. Unless anybody's like, I didn't get this thing from the video. Do you want me to clarify it? Yeah, no, we're not doing Homestuck. Alright, I think we're gonna end the stream for now, but thanks for coming. I'm probably gonna edit this down and make it a video eventually, but for now I'll leave this one up so we can watch the whole thing. Alright, bye y'all. See you around. Thanks for watching. Hopefully we will do more ranking stuff streams in the future. This was kind of a trial run because I've never really done this before. So yeah, thanks for coming.